Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our community. It is Tuesday, May 12th, and we are here at the Widecast Studios in downtown Peoria, and our community is sponsored by I've Decided Media. I've got three special guests with me today.
Hello.
Kim Martin, the famous Kim Martin of I've Decided, is
Infamous.
joining me
Yeah, the infamous.
as a co-host today. And then I also have with me Ashley Trachek and Ben Watt of
Hey.
Peoria Charter
Hello.
Coach. And we are going to talk to you today a little bit about Detours. And you know, I've listened to a couple of your vodcast or podcast, Kim, and each week these words have so much special meaning when you compare it to the situation that we're in
I know, it's
today,
crazy.
right? So today is day 53 of the Illinois stay-at-home order.
I'm not
I
keeping
did the math.
track.
You know, I wasn't either.
Thanks for reminding us all, Andy.
I wasn't either, but then I woke up this morning as I was preparing my thoughts for the show today. I thought, I wonder how long it's been. I know it's been
Right.
since the middle of March, and it's actually been longer since we closed the doors at the Y. We did that on March 16th, so
Yeah.
it's 58 days. We're almost 2 full months
That's unbelievable.
since we closed the doors at the Y. So, but the weekly winning word of detours is really relevant when you think about what it is that we're dealing with today. So we're going to talk a little bit about that with you today, and hopefully it will encourage you and inspire you to really embrace this change, because that's what this is all about.
Life has detours.
It sure does. So I like to start off with providing a definition for what the word is each week when we get started. So the definition for detours is a deviation from a direct course or the usual procedure.
Right.
And I would say that there's been a lot of deviation from our direct course in our line of business, especially, and that's what we want to talk to the folks here, Ashley and Ben at Peoria Charter, of what they're doing, how they're approaching this detour, and how they conduct their business. So welcome
Thank you.
to the show, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having
today.
us. We're excited to be here.
So why don't you start off, Ben, and just
Sure.
talk to us a little bit about what changes you guys have made. What are you doing with your employees
Right.
now that you've been able to bring them all back, and how that's working for you guys?
So I'm the Human Resources and Safety Compliance Officer. Ashley is our recruiter / HR everything.
Assistant
Yeah.
or
She brings the joy to the HR
well,
part.
thank you.
There you go.
I
I'm
try to
really
be
good at
positive.
writing write-ups. She sends out happy emails every day. So,
Good cop, bad cop?
That's
Is that
right.
kinda how it
Kind of, a little bit,
really
yeah.
so personally, when we first got laid off, I had mixed emotions because when do you ever have an opportunity in your life to be laid off and unemployment benefit almost as much as you make or more than you make, depending on what kind of job that you have? And so the first couple weeks, I just didn't know what to do with myself.
Right.
About the third week, I decided, you know what? For the next 2 weeks, I'm just going to relax, enjoy the detour. And I actually told some people on the phone and email, I was like, hey, we're just going to push pause on all these different things we're working on. And then 2 days later, I got a call that said, we're coming back to work. And frankly, it was bittersweet because I was like, oh, I just got into this new gear. So then here's a new detour. But when we got back, there were things going on that the skeleton crew had kept going.
Yeah.
So one thing that we're doing is every Monday morning, we have a Zoom conference call with both of our locations in Urbana and Peoria, something we talked about doing forever.
Yeah.
And we hadn't done it.
Right.
That is our director of operations meeting with all the department heads, just a 1 hour meeting. That's been really good for our company, which again, before we're just like, oh, we're too busy for these meetings, but now we can see how that's so productive.
And I think that's the thing, like we can so often use that excuse of we're too busy.
Yeah.
And so these things kind of get pushed to the wayside. And I know for me personally, like every Monday, I look forward to that
Yes.
meeting because, you know, we don't get to see the people over at our Champaign location, you know, all the time. And so something that was implemented this last week was kind of starting with an icebreaker. So our director of ops was out of town, and so I ran the meeting, and I started started with a would you rather question, and just like a super simple thing to just kind of build a little bit of cohesiveness amongst the group and just bring a little fun too, because it's just interesting to hear, different people's responses to that question that I asked. And
even in our company, so we have about 90 employees at the Peoria location and 50 at Urbana. We're not all back yet. All the full-time employees are back, not part-time. But I don't chat with the mechanics very often, or the dispatcher every once in a while, and so this meeting is just really good, which successful companies have meetings like this already.
Sure.
But ours were not as intentional as they are now. So that's one good detour that we've had. I've got a list.
And I think that's great. I think we have learned, at least in my experience, and I agree with what you said, to do our work differently.
yes.
So in my world at the Y, I've got 75 employees that were on our payroll when this all hit, and most of those are part-time folks. So I've got about 8 to 10, or most of those are part-time. I've got about 8 to 10 full-time staff we've been able to keep our full-time staff working. And but beyond that, I work with a board. I have a board of directors. I have almost 20 volunteers who really govern our business, our nonprofit business. And we continue to have our meetings regularly. I've got more committee meetings and task force meetings going on with my volunteers than I've ever had before. I find myself being busier than I ever was before this, but we're doing all of that virtually. Everybody's at home, and more are engaged because it's easier to call in or to get on a computer and dial in and be engaged in the conversation than it is to come to a physical meeting. So I think that we've learned that we can do things differently and probably be a little bit more efficient in how we do it and be more productive overall. So I think that there's definitely some positives that have come out of
it was
this.
either our first or second Zoom meeting where I asked the question at the end. They kind of go around, does everybody have anything they'd like to say? And I said, what would you do if you had more time? So let's think back to a month and a half ago. What was it that we didn't have enough time to do? So we're rewriting our employee handbook. We are taking seats out of motor coaches and polishing floors, and that's a big job.
And
In fact,
vacuuming and shampooing the
yes.
seats.
When I heard that I'm about to tell on myself here. When I heard that might be what we're doing, I made sure to wear a shirt and tie to work when we came back, so they'd ask me last.
You're like, I'm not dressed for
I
that
was
job.
like, I
Right.
can't-
Sorry, not today. Maybe tomorrow.
And now the
But
cat's out of the bag. But
yeah.
that was
Bill will have a coach waiting for you. When you
That's right. Have your name on it. Here's Ben.
Well, I was just
Benoit.
thinking, as we are navigating through life's detours, and this is a big detour for a lot of us and those that are watching, I just love that you guys are looking for that beauty in the new scenery, right? That you
Right.
are trying to focus on what you can change. You're really, following these processes of navigating through the detours and still staying focused on your goal, which is to have a successful business, and to be profitable and to be able to provide jobs and give back in the community. And I just think that we can navigate and keep through this and keep our eyes on our goals and dreams and not throw in the towel. And I just appreciate you guys so much. I appreciate Bill, the owner, of his courage to stand up and to speak what he believes is truth. I just have such an admiration for him. From that small business perspective. And the first one is take time to assess the situation before reacting emotionally. I think that was hard for
I failed at that. I just want you to know. I failed
It's
at that.
hard.
That
Yes.
is the hard part, to take that step back and not have that knee-jerk reaction, right?
Definitely.
So how long did it take you guys to kind of get through that initial first kind of because we don't have to spend a lot of time talking about this because this is in hindsight, but the reality is, if this was not fake news, if this were true, you guys, when this happened, lost like $300,000 in 2 days, something like that in revenue.
yes, that'd be the bottom. Yeah, we lost over $1 million in We had $1 million in cancellations, I think, in just the first week.
Wow.
Maybe 2 million since.
And it seemed like it was like happening so fast. Like I remember we were getting ready to actually interview a driver. And it was like in our basement at our facility or at our office. And I remember like hearing people say like, okay, this group canceled. And then like 20 minutes later, oh, this group canceled. And these are like big groups that have spent a lot of money with us. And so all of a sudden, I think my wheels just were like turning like, oh my goodness, like this is snowballing a lot faster, than I was anticipating. I don't know.
Definitely. Yeah. No, the vice president came to me and said, how do you feel about layoffs? And I said, well, in my mind, I thought, I guess we'll have to do it at some point. And then 2 days later, it was like, okay, pretty much everybody's laid off. It just came so fast. Yeah.
Right.
Isn't that crazy?
But
So that initial take time to assess the situation came to a screeching halt. So you guys didn't.
I think if I'm going somewhere on a road somewhere and I hit a detour, the emotional is there. But you may not be able to stop the emotion right away.
Right.
But like I think you just said a second ago, step back from it and go, okay, let's reassess. Because we make mistakes. People sell stocks or they hoard toilet paper, whatever it might
Become
be.
a hoarder
Because of the
immediately.
emotion. And it is tough to separate that, but this too shall pass. So how can we be ready for it? This
Exactly.
detour is going to take extra time. So call ahead or whatever,
I think
Especially
too,
when that much money is involved.
Oh my,
right.
yeah.
But I think too, just looking at, okay, what can we learn from this?
Yes.
I think that, and I hope that's what a lot of people are doing. That's like what I've been doing. I think both of us at Peoria Charter, but then also just like personally, like in my life too, obviously this is a detour that no one had anticipated, but like, what's the positive that we can get from this and focus on that? Because I think that, it's just so much better for your health if you're focusing on the positive rather than the negative. So
Well, and you're going to be more successful
exactly.
if you take the positives out of every situation. There's no doubt about it. And my answer to that question is it happened so fast. I don't think I had time to have emotion. It was like, okay, we've got to react.
Right.
I've got 2,000 members that need to know what it is that we're going to do. How are we going to handle this? How are we going to respond in that way? And I didn't get emotional until it got extended.
Yeah.
When it got extended, then I got mad.
Right.
And ask my wife, she'll tell you, I was basically stomping around the house for the weekend saying, this is crazy. I don't understand why this is going on and blah, blah, blah. And it took me, but it didn't happen until after we were about a month into it. And now I'm past that and we're able to deal with that. But it was backwards for me.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really odd that it happened that way. But there was a period of time after about 30 days where it was like, this is crazy. I don't know what to do at this point.
For me, I think I went through spells. I'm kind of like you, Ben. I went through those spells like, sweet, I'm home.
Yeah.
My husband's home. My kids are home. This is awesome. Like, no drive time. Just start working whenever I want to, so I had that feeling of guilt for a minute, like I'm having too much fun.
Right.
And then I'm like, I have businesses that I have to worry about. I have employees.
Right.
Okay, you can't have too much fun. You need to figure this out. So it was like one day was like, okay. And then the next day was like the Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're getting ready to, we're working on going back to business as usual. Not as usual, business way different, but
Yeah, and I think that brings us to the second point in your weekly running resource, right? Is you have to focus on what you can control. So you want to take time to assess, and then you got to focus on what do I have control over, and how do I want to handle that? And I think that's a really important feature because there's so much going on out there that you have no say in.
Right.
And you can spend a lot of time focusing on things that are going to do nothing for you or for the people that you serve in whatever capacity. So I think that that's a really important piece to think about as well.
Real quick, when I started at Peoria Charter, I was coming from another career, and I started out just as a driver and then the night manager, like the cleaning supervisor. So my income was very different than it is now. So the day that I came home from work and told my wife I was laid off, she's like, how do you feel? And I was like, well, kind of giddy. I was like, because I think in my mind, it was just a pause.
Yeah.
A couple weeks, this will all be over.
Right.
As that changed, then we started going, okay, we lived happy and healthy on half the income. we can do it again if we have to. It'll be a pain and inconvenience, but really, I would kind of fluctuate between that depression and
Right.
excited about it. But really, when it's beyond your control, don't worry about it. I give it to God. Right? Lord, there's nothing else.
That's the
It's yours.
foundation.
Here you
Yes.
go.
Right.
The
What can I do?
When you've
Faith
done
is the
everything.
foundation
Oh.
for all. There's no doubt about it. And you can walk through this with so much more confidence when you have that foundation of faith and know that I don't understand what's going on. I am not going to have the answers to this, but I know who does.
That's right.
So I'm going to put my faith there, and I'm going to just continue to do what I can do.
Right. And I read a quote
Exactly.
recently that I absolutely loved, and it was, God is good at being God. And I was like, that's so simple, yet so good.
Right.
So just hold on to that nugget of truth.
I love that. That's really good.
Yeah.
I want to make sure we touch base because you guys are such community difference makers at Peoria Charter and the Y as well. So give kudos to you guys too. But you guys are such community difference makers. One of the things that you guys are, I think, is a good example of folks and what you can control is that you're utilizing your services to help the community.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, please do.
Right. So obviously, we're not taking our coaches out on the road for, large trips or anything like that, but we are utilizing our drivers to help deliver groceries, medications, those types of things. So we've actually partnered with Haddad's and then also Essential Wellness and Prec Shot Pharmacy as well. So we have a couple of drivers every week. It's kind of on a rotation, and they just go out and deliver. So maybe you have somebody who orders from Haddad's, they don't feel comfortable picking it up or they're not able to. Our drivers go in, pick it up, deliver it to them. So I think it's just been great for our drivers to also kind of have that sense of giving back to the community as well.
And we're not charging for that. So
Correct, yep.
we have a fleet of vans because we use them in various parts of our work. So they're not running around in motor coaches. delivering
I
goods.
was actually kind of thinking
that
about
was
that. I
that
had
was
this
the
vision.
first-
I'm like, man, I
That'd
haven't
be
seen
super
the motor
cool.
coaches.
That was the first thing I thought when we were talking about doing that is we're going to deliver groceries in motor coaches.
Or like,
That'd be
here's
really
your
cool.
medication. Here's
Right.
like one pill bottle, and yeah.
But we have about a dozen vans of various sizes, so both in Urbana and in Peoria. And we wanted to do locally owned businesses. So especially Haddad's, I wasn't in on that process, but I could overhear the conversation. And Dennis comes out and like, Haddad's was just thrilled when we called and said, would you like us to deliver groceries for free? And so our drivers are enjoying it. They've
Yeah.
got some pretty exciting stories. And then
Yeah.
we've done some, not officially with Meals on Wheels, but some of the organizations that deliver meals, we've also assisted
That
them
is
as
so
well.
awesome.
Yeah.
So
And we've also done things over in the Champaign, Urbana area as well, partnering with one of their grocery stores over there. So that's been exciting for us to be able to do that and give back. So, and I think too, so also another thing that we've just been able to do for all of our employees is offer some online trainings that we've actually partnered with I've Decided and Chem. And so we did 4 different online workshops that covered goals and communication, finances, and then also health. That's the one we just finished this morning. And so we've had some people hop on, be a part of those workshops. But then what I loved is that you were able to record them and then we were able to send it out to all 150 of our employees as well if they were unable to attend at that time. So I think that that's been really cool, kind of being able to invest in our employees during this time as well. Just because, our finances are looking different during this pandemic. Obviously health is. I feel like you can always improve on communication, especially when your stress level is a little bit higher due to all that's going on as well. And then obviously with goals, you can always be setting goals and thinking about those things. So I know that I've enjoyed that, and I think that our employees have too.
it's also something that we wanted to do previously, and employees kind of have had the mindset, oh, I don't have time for that.
Yes.
Right.
And so it's been great to see the participation from a handful or several actually, and lots of feedback. I
Yeah.
even used some of the things that I learned last week.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And I know as we were wrapping it up here, but you guys still have some things going at the Y. And
We do.
What,
We do.
So what do you got? I mean, you guys
Well,
are taking care of the kids, and what?
Yeah.
But what about the camps and things like that? Is that going to look?
Well,
different?
that's what we're trying to figure out. We're planning on running summer camp programs, although they're going to be different. We know they're going to be different. There's going to be a lot of, space issues and things like that. Although when you're working with kids, social distancing is not easy.
No.
Nor should I say that it is. I don't even know that it's really as necessary. But you can try to require kids to be 6 feet apart, but guess what? They're not going to
Yeah.
be. So we have to figure that out. But we are planning on running our summer programs. I told you earlier that we closed our doors on March 16th, or actually March 15th was Sunday. March 16th, we started running emergency childcare. So the very next day we pivoted and turned our facility into an emergency childcare site. So we have folks who are at the time considered the essential workers. They could bring their kids to the Y and we would provide care for them. We've been doing that ever since, and we'll continue to provide it as long as it's needed. So that was the main thing that we put into action. We've done some things similar to what you guys have described. We partnered with Neighborhood House. We loaned them 2 staff and a van and
very
said,
cool.
use them for your Meals on Wheels program for as long as you need them. I think they worked for them for about 3 weeks. We were able to do that. And then we've done kind of the same thing with East Bluff Community Center up here. They have a food pantry that they only open up on Saturday mornings, or did. But for the month of May, they're now opening it up on Wednesdays for the folks in their community. And our staff are running it
Oh wow.
for them because they didn't
Cool.
have the capacity to do that. So we've been able to basically loan some employees out and allow them to serve in those ways, which has been really kind of unique, not unique, but neat to see because, for the YMCA, and a lot of people don't necessarily understand that the YMCA we're a charitable nonprofit organization, and our mission is focused on serving the community. We're founded on Christian principles. But a lot of times, I don't think people necessarily recognize that. And that's a failure of ours because we don't necessarily live it in the way that we should. So it's allowed us to kind of refocus back to our mission and look outside of the organization and where can we plug in and where can we help and where can we serve. And so I'm hopeful that as we move through this and kind of get back to normal, whatever that looks like, that we're able to keep these types of programs and services in place
Right.
because it's bigger than us.
Right.
And this community needs support like that. And we're not going to be able to fill the need everywhere. Peoria Charter is not going to be able to fill the need everywhere. But if we all do our part where we're needed, then we're going to be able to lift this community up and make it stronger. No matter how bad it feels right now, because I think we're seeing a lot of that in this community.
Yes.
If you can get through the negative news that seems to kind of lead the stories across all the medias, there's a lot of good stuff that's going on out there, and a lot of organizations that are stepping up, and a lot of people. There's this Facebook group out there of these. I believe they're all women. Now there could be some men involved, but that are making masks for people in our community, and they're turning out tens of thousands of masks
Wow.
to provide to the hospitals and the other places that need them. And now they're just starting to make them for just anybody because
Right.
now we all need them.
Right.
Everywhere you go, you got to have one.
Right.
And it's just really neat to see how people are pulling it all together.
That's awesome.
So-
I can see your passion. I love it. There's this community is great, and you can see everyone coming together. But real quickly, just to recap, so take time to assess the situation before reacting emotionally, if at all possible. Don't focus on things you can't change. Focus on what you can. Find the beauty in the new scenery. And last but not least, just so we can touch base before we come to a close, is just trust the process.
right.
And I think you said it the best, Ashley, when you said that quote. You want to repeat that quote one more time?
Yeah, so the quote is, God is good at being God.
Yes.
And just leave it in his hands.
Yes.
Because all day we can try racking our mind about how we think it should be or what we think's going to happen, but at the end of the day, it's out of our control.
Yeah.
You just got to trust the process.
I think that's great. And I'm going to take a little more time.
Okay.
This-
Oh, Lord, we got him fired up.
because you tweeted something last night, and I saw it, and it was an encouragement for folks to read Romans 8:28
That's right.
and look at that verse and see how it, and I did that. I was on my phone, I pulled up my scripture app and I read it. And I
Oh,
thought,
that makes my heart
I
smile.
thought, you know what? This is really important. So I'm going to read to you a
Glad somebody
devotion
read
that I pulled out of Our Daily Bread, which most people are probably familiar with.
Yeah.
That is focused around Romans 8:28. So for those of you out there that don't know what Romans 8:28 says, I'm going to read it to you. It says, "We know that all things work together for good to those who love God." We often, and I'm just going to read this to you. So we often begin with the words, "All things work together for good." But the verse really begins like this: We know.
We know.
We know that all things work together for good to those who love God. Our knowing comes by faith. By faith, we are confident that God will never disappoint us. I read a story about a shipwreck. When the sole survivor reached a small, uninhabited island, he prayed for God to rescue him, but help didn't come. Eventually, he built a hut out of driftwood for protection from the elements. One day, he returned from scavenging for food and found his hut in flames, the smoke rising into the sky. Angrily, he cried, "God, how can you do this to me?" The next morning, he was awakened by rescuers. "How did you know I was here?" he asked. "We saw your smoke signal," they replied. Sometimes God's love almost seems like hatred because of the difficulties he allows to come our way. The final result, however, always confirms its true nature. The next time it seems as your last hope has gone up in smoke, remember that we know. What we know to be true from Romans 8:28. When God says that all things work together for good to those who love him, he means all things, even coronavirus.
Right.
That's right.
I love that. Yes.
Amen. I got
Yes.
chills. I'm almost in tears. It's my favorite verse. I absolutely love it and live by it. And if I start feeling anxious about anything, I always immediately start repeating that verse. I know it by heart, and I just start repeating it over and over. And it's like, he is a good father. He is a good, good father. And a good, good father would never, ever
That's right.
intentionally harm his children or not bring them through to the other side.
We just have to let him do his work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't
Right?
mean that bad things won't happen because we live
Right.
in a bad world.
That's right.
Yeah.
But he will work it out for us because that's what he does. So that was so good.
Thank you for allowing me to share that. And
Thank you for reading my tweet.
for joining us on our community.
Awesome.
Yes.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Peoria
you.
Charter. Why? We're so excited. That was good.
PeoriaLife.com.